So how's everybody doing?
Great.
All right. Well, first, Sabrina, where'd you go?
She left.
Oh. All that energy, and she already left. Sabrina, thank you for the introduction. And let's see, where's Connie? In the back there. Okay, so thank you, Connie, for setting this all up. And we just are so grateful to be here. I want to say thank you to all of you for taking time out of a Veterans Day to be here. And you're going to find I prefer to walk around the room, so I may come down. I don't like to be stuck behind a thing here if we don't have to. But so let's get a couple of things out of the way. This is kind of like where I want to have some fun, because statistics tell me that there's a small percentage in the room that aren't going to listen to a word I have to say. So you can take a look at some of these logos up here and make fun of me accordingly for some of the sports teams that I follow. And perfect. There's always a few Steeler fans.
Yes. There you go.
See that? See that? There was a match made in heaven. So we get that out of the way, and just to give you a little visual, and you guys. So it's a little different in this room because you guys are all in the system, right? You're in the system. So there's a confidentiality out there that's assumed, right? Because we all signed some kind of piece of paper. So I really didn't need to blur the faces, but we still do it that way just to make sure, and we hide names and all that kind of stuff. So if I slip up here today, I know I'm protected by that, but ultimately you can see that right up here is Chubbs, and that's so. A long story short, I was single, never married until I was 39 years old, and then boom, there you go. I ended up with 5 children. At one time, there was 5 other women in my house, including my mother-in-law, and even our dog was a girl. So I had a really fun time adapting to that, as you can imagine. So that's just a brief overview of my family. And I traveled down. I just recently moved to Nashville, Tennessee, but George and I met through the foster care system in Palm Beach County. We lived in West Palm Beach, Florida. So hopefully that's enough to get it going, right? So probably can't see this much further than the first or second table. You're not missing much. This is just some bullet points. So as we make the transition into what it means to be a foster parent, right? Because you all in this room know what that looks like. And my wife and I, we were just talking earlier about how this was a calling for us, no doubt. This wasn't something that was orchestrated. No one convinced us to do this. This was absolutely a calling. And you'll find that that's what turned into the kingdom impact that we talk about in our presentation. And the slide says, what were we thinking? And for the foster parents, and raise your hand if you're a foster parent, so I have an idea of where, there's like 2 hiding over here. Nobody look at them. What were we thinking? Right? I mean, honestly, what were we thinking? Why would we want to do this? Nothing logically out there would convince you to be a foster parent, right? I mean, read the news, look at all the stuff you hear out there, all the problems in the system, so to speak, right? So what were we thinking? And there's a lot of different, I can't speak for your system here. I don't know what the courts are like here, the judges and whatever else. But one of the things that we noticed right off the bat was I always ask myself, do we have any rights as foster parents? And sure, there's a lot of people that will tell us that we do. But at the end of the day, we don't. We're volunteers and we're contractors for the government, is what it comes down to. And I talk with only a couple of foster parents in the room. I'm not going to go into that. You guys all know what that means, and you guys all know what that looks like. And on top of that, thank you for your service, because I don't know what you were thinking coming into the jobs that you have either, right? I mean, let's just be honest about it, right? So then, as the CBC community, how do you prepare us as foster parents to be ready for this? Because we take classes, we spend a couple of evenings with you, or we spend our Saturdays with you. How in the world do you prepare folks for a knock on the door. Here's a baby. Good luck. Here's a book that has 3 or 4 pieces of information. And good luck. I hope it works out, and we're going to come see you every couple days. Right? How do you prepare for that? From my experience, there was nothing. From my experience, there was no class. There was no presentation. And look, I know everybody works really hard to put all that stuff together, right? And every so many months or years or days, I guess, they change the training, right? The curriculum. And I get it. And it's all important, especially the things that we don't know, we don't know. But how do you prepare somebody emotionally? How do you prepare somebody physically? How do you make that bridge? It's a challenge, right? So, at its root level, as foster parents, we signed up to love children that we know are going to be taken away from us at some point in time. Right? Very rarely is the end game not reunification. Sometimes it is. But last I heard, there were 1,600 children in Palm Beach County that needed a home, or that needed. We're in the foster care system. Sorry. Not all of those we're going to end up in a good place, right? We know those statistics. And then, of course, if I'm being real with you, and that's a lot about what I like to talk about, is I'm going to say some things that are probably going to be uncomfortable. They're absolutely going to make me uncomfortable. I just happen to learn that when I'm uncomfortable, and hopefully when you're uncomfortable, is when we grow, right? So I'm going to go ahead and tell you that we had selfish motives, my wife and I. We had selfish motives as foster parents because we one day wanted to adopt, right? And we use that A word very, got to keep it on the down low, right, when you're talking to people, because you got to be careful, right? But of course, we also thought we were better parents than everybody else, right? I mean, I'm better than you guys. Come on. Boy, did I learn something, right? But that's what we thought in the beginning. That was our selfish motive. If I'm being honest with you, I can pretend that wasn't the case. And I can give you lip service. I can tell, our agencies that we were working with that wasn't the case. But at the end of the day, that's what we believed. And then, of course, the one that I also heard a lot was, well, we have nicer houses now, and all the stuff that comes along with that, right? Because if that was the case, I think would it be Bill Gates would have all the children? Is that how? Where there's probably some prince down in Dubai that would have them all, I guess. I'm not really sure how that plays out. So hopefully that gives you a brief summary of my wife and I and our beginning stages. So how we transition that into the Kingdom Impact, and the reason that George and I are here today, is I looked at it from a different perspective, and certainly not in the beginning. And I go back to the Bible a lot in my daily life. I'm grateful for all the other texts and all the other curriculum that we've had, but isn't it a nice thing to know that the Bible tells us, I will not leave you as orphans, I will come to you. And I know that was a nice thing for the children, right? As Chubbs is up here. I mean, he didn't know it when he was a couple of days or a couple of weeks old, but he was protected. And all of you are involved in that. Everybody in this room, in some capacity, is a part of that, right? So it's good news for the children, but what does it mean for us? It's time to get to work. We got a lot of work to do, right? And then, of course, you go Old Testament, and if you'll notice in black, it says, I will kill you with the sword. And that, of course, is referring to if you don't take care of the orphans and if you don't take care of the children, right? And I don't know about you, but I don't want to be killed with a sword today. No. So it's a good thing we're doing what we need to do, right? So now I'd like to just tell you a love story. And eventually I'm going to hand it over to George to let him finish, because Connie was asking us earlier, how long we've been doing this and how many times and whatever else. And each time we get together, the story grows. The slides have to change because it's not consistent. It continues to grow. And boy, are we grateful for that. So in the dictionary, it says love is an intense feeling of deep affection. And I can tell you that when Chubbs came into my life, I had no idea what that meant. But within a few weeks or months, I understood love. And I had the romantic love with my wife. And at the time, we were pregnant with my first biological child. So I hadn't even had my own child yet. And Karen taught me everything that I know about loving a child. And I didn't even know that I was capable of having those feelings. I didn't even know that I was capable of having deep affection for somebody else. And I will be forever grateful. One of these days, I hope that he understands that. Obviously, today he doesn't. Without getting into it too deep, because, again, saying some of this stuff is painful, right? But at the time, I don't know how it works up here. At the time, we used to get emails when there was a child available. And we got an email, and you know how much information you normally get, right, when they're asking you to take a child. Sometimes it's a male. He's under 5 feet. I don't know. So when we got the email, it circulated a couple of times because a lot of families were passing. Okay, and I won't go into the details. I'll just let your imaginations wander. And my wife and I we just felt called. And we ignored all of the obstacles. We ignored some of the things that may or may not have even been true. And we took a leap of faith. And we welcomed him into our home. And 14 months later, it completely changed us. So as I look at what that means as far as love is concerned, and I don't mind using the dictionary, and I love hearing things from the training that we've had. But I also point back to the Bible, and it tells us love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it is not rude, it's not self-seeking. There's one. Kind of goes back to the other slide, right, when my wife and I were in it for the selfish motives. It's not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, and always perseveres. And when I look at that definition, it really changes the game. Because then it translates from not only my relationship with Chubbs, it translates into my relationship with George. And it translates into the relationship that I have with every other child that was in my home. And sometimes we had contact with their parents and sometimes we didn't. But it translated into all of that. And it translates into my relationships with you. Even though I never worked with you individually, you see foster parents on a daily basis. And we're not always acting that way. Right? Right? My 2 foster parents that are hiding over here. I truly believe in this statement. We are called as foster parents to love every child so much that they don't know they're in foster care. And that was our goal. We kind of used that as a bit of a mission statement, if you will. And we did everything, we said everything, we treated every child in our home as if they were a member of our family, and we completely ignored the fact that there was other reasons why they were in our home. Because at the end of the day, it's somewhat easy to love your own biological children. I mean, I get it when they're teenagers. There's some times we'd like to maybe kick them out. I don't know. You can love them from a distance, right? Text them, check their Facebook page from another county. Right, all kidding aside. I had two teenagers. I've got a 20-year-old, a 19-year-old, two 3-year-olds, and a 1-year-old. Okay? So I get the phone calls with, please send a check. This is what happened. And I usually get those while I'm changing a diaper. So the last piece of this slide is kind of where it gets into some of the difficult stuff. Because, and it really doesn't even belong on this slide because it talks about, can I tell you a love story? But realistically, it was demonizing the biological parent, right? So you can imagine, I mean, George is standing up here. At the time that we had Chubbs in our home, we were rooting against that. This is that part, I promised you I'd be raw. We were rooting against him. We were waiting for our caseworker to call us and let us know when things weren't going well. And of course, we lived on every email or every ounce of information that was negative. We lived to get a text message that this just happened, and maybe that was the smoking gun. It was going to give us the opportunity to step in and be the forever family. And, you know, these slides are meant to be funny. I'm sure you can't see them, but, you know, there's a baby in a cage up here, right? So the example is that, again, going back to that previous, you know, conversation there about us being better. And we wanted to basically turn George, we demonized him for months and months. Didn't even know him, hadn't even met him at the time. We were very selfish during that period of time. And I can remember, you know, as I like to share some real life examples. And there was a time where Chubbs came back to our home and he had a little bump on his head. And of course, we turned that into the smoking gun, right? I mean, we made sure that the transporter saw it. We took pictures. We texted the caseworker. I tried to get the White House on the phone. They wouldn't answer, right?
Yeah.
Because this is it, right? We finally did. We finally got the smoking gun. I've got pictures. I've got proof that George is a bad parent. And then 3 days later, Chubbs climbed out of his high chair on my watch. And he banged his head. So where were my wife and I? We were weeping uncontrollably and praying that that wasn't going to be the night that there would be a surprise visit, right? Because nobody was there to take that picture. My phone was broken that night, right? Couldn't get it to turn on. Where's that thing? I don't know why it's not working. So you get some perspective when you start to see it from the other side. So during that time, and I don't want to take away from George's piece of this, right? During that time, I can only imagine what George is going through. I mean, his child's in somebody else's home. There's a judge and all these other people and lawyers and whatever else communicating with him and telling him you've got to do this to get your biological son back that you've proven and so on and so forth, right? That's tough. But that entire time, I was selfish. I was only thinking about my selfish motives. My wife and I were consistent with our selfish motives. And in the meantime, he's working his tail off over here behind the scenes to get things done. things that everybody in this room would probably love to see, right? You don't see enough of it. Again, that's his story. So, you go to reunification day, right? So 14 months. Now, in the meantime, we've had a child. My wife was 6 or 7 months pregnant when Chubbs came along. And we've had a baby, and we still have 3 children in our home. And they tell you that reunification is coming, right? The judge signs something, and you get an email. Everything in Palm Beach County, or where I was at least, they did everything by email. Those are always fun emails to read, right? And of course, a lot of our friends would get a phone call at 9:30 in the morning after they had dropped the child off for childcare or daycare, wherever they were, and just said, they're not coming home to your house tonight. That's the end, right? So I'm just grateful. My wife and I are so grateful that we had some time. We had a chance to prepare ourselves. But realistically, going back to the beginning of this, there was no class we could take. There was no training. There was no book we could read. There was no video that anybody has that could prepare us for saying goodbye. We knew it was coming, and in fact, you probably remember when you and I were in the room with the people trying to make the whatever, and they were going to drag it out for like a month or two of, 3 days on and 2 days off, and then you'll get them on this, and if 6 o'clock you bring them over here, and then on Tuesdays afternoon you go, and we just said, look, he's been consistent with visits. It's not like this is a stranger in his home. Let's just make this happen, right? It's time. It's time. Let's get it over with. Too much paperwork, too many emails, too many phone calls, all that kind of stuff. So I think between the two of us, we just hammered out the 2-week transition plan right there in the room, and it was done. And then I went into my car and I cried like a baby. Because I never felt that before. And I couldn't even imagine what my life was going to be like without him in my home. And I got home and I held him as tight as I ever could. And of course, I've got teenagers in the house, so I'm trying to keep it together. So I would just find times to sneak in the bathroom and cry. And I did that for about 2 weeks. And I couldn't sleep at night and everything. Luckily, I was in a position at work that I could kind of hide behind it for a little while, long enough to get through it. And I never could understand, when you look at the kingdom impact, I was looking at my selfish reasons, and I'm on my knees begging God to stop this. And weeping uncontrollably. And of course, he has no idea what's coming. And that's when that transformation started. It didn't end at that moment, but it started when I started to recognize that, again, this wasn't about me. This wasn't about my wife. This wasn't about our home. But all I could think of at the time was, why are you taking this child from me? It's not fair. But we've all been there in this room. We've seen it. That was the plan, right? I mean, what did I think was going to be different? The plan was reunification all along. The judge told us that. The caseworkers told us that. The transporters told us that. Everything. There was no reason to believe otherwise. And I had too much pride, and I was too selfish to recognize that in that moment. That there was a bigger picture that I couldn't see. And that's where the kingdom impact came from. There's more to this, right? So we were just talking about this outside, and we were in a Target parking lot. I volunteered instead of having a transporter and all that kind of stuff. Packed everything up, and I didn't sleep I was up the entire night before. So I was just a completely different person, it seemed. And you're packing up your car with stuff, and you put this beautiful child in a car seat knowing that's the last time you're going to do it. And you drive a couple miles down the road, and when you make that transaction, right, that handoff, and you're doing everything you can to keep your chest from exploding, that was when it hit me. That was when that transformation came. I don't know, but he's not a demon. He's a dad. He's a special dad because he's Chubbs' dad. And instantaneously, God took care of the things that I can't take care of for myself, right? He completely transformed that, and now I became George's biggest fan. Because if this dad doesn't succeed, then that child's in bad shape. Right? So that's what it looks like next. That was when he got baptized, right?
Yes.
So I've been blessed to be asked to be my wife and I, to be his godparents. We went to church that day, and they sing like you've never sang in his church, compared to my church. I don't even know how else to describe it. I was exhausted. The kids were running around the middle, and we all went back to his house afterwards. Now, you can't really see it. Inside there is a guy whose heart's still a little bit broken. But the story continues. Knowing that he's in good hands. Having a relationship with somebody who's completely turned his life around. It's beyond anything that I could. I mean, you couldn't write a book. There's no movie. This is real life, raw stuff that happens every day, right? But it has that kingdom impact, because if you look at this table, there's faces at this table that aren't here that are being impacted by it. And that's part of George's story, so I won't take that. But there's so much more. My children will see what this does. People in our community saw what this does. People in our church see what this does. People that are friends with us on Facebook see what this does. You ever heard of Facebook? All right. Sometimes I'm in my audience. So, you guys will spend a day together, right? And the way I look at it, I can't just sit around and watch things happen. I have to take action. Of course, you know, I'm a typical guy. I like to fix things, and my wife will tell you that. I have to fix everything, right? But at the end of the day, it's just about action. Instead of talking about it, let's go be about it. Let's be out in our communities doing something about it. Telling your friends, telling your family, you guys all work together, sharing the message of what we can do in our community to make a difference, right? When it comes to the children, the challenge that I always have with my own children, and every time I see Chubbs, and every time I interact with other children, is I try to make their dreams bigger than their memories. Because a lot of children, and myself included, if I go back to my childhood, and I'm sure there's a lot of you in this room that are in that same boat, have some pain or some bad experiences in your past, we have memories. It doesn't have to shape us. Fortunately, Chubbs is too young to have a whole lot of memories of what it was like for those 14 months. But we get to let him dream and set goals. And hopefully he'll play for Virginia Tech one day, maybe like a defensive back or something. I'm not really sure, but we'll talk about that later. It's probably not appropriate for this group. So then it brings it to you guys, right? It takes a village to raise a child. And again, I don't know if you can see that, but it takes a village to raise a child. And we're going to fast forward to why you guys were here today. Teamwork. Right? So let me see if, so it takes a village to raise a child. My wife and I didn't do it on our own for those 14 months. It's people like you that are in this room right now that help make it happen. George was in it every step of the way, even when I was rooting against him. The judge, our friends from church, our neighbors bringing us food when we were knee-deep in diapers and couldn't find a way to order a pizza, right? Fatherless or orphan, those two words show up 37 times in the Bible. There's probably a good reason for it. And that's that kingdom impact, and it can't be stopped. When I look at the impact that this entire story has had on me and my wife and my family and George and the rest of his story, that's for him to tell. You can't stop it. It keeps growing. More and more people hear about it. More and more people experience it. More and more people are asking us questions about it. There's awareness. And then there's people like you out there living it and experiencing it and making it happen every day. So going back to your purpose for today, right? At least that's what Connie told me, right? It's teamwork today, right? What better way for teamwork than to jam like 300 people in a room and just, you can't leave until you start working as a team, right? So the definition of teamwork is it's a noun, cooperative or coordinated effort on the part of a group of persons acting together as a team or in the interests of a common cause. So if we just really quickly take that word cause and put child, and we act in the interests of a common child. Simple, right? Anybody in this room want to argue that? That's a lot of people, right? Can you imagine if everybody in this room was acting, or we had our interests focused on the child every single time? Can you imagine what we can do? The folks that aren't here today probably need to hear this message too, right? So let's take it to them. But that's that kingdom impact, right? It can't be stopped. If every one of us in this room left here today to go make a story like this, imagine what that looks like. So see how some more faces came, right? Remember the pictures in the beginning were different than the pictures, and now there's this one here? That was Christmas Day. There was nobody else I wanted to have Christmas dinner with at my house than this family. Nobody. We didn't even ask anybody else to come over. Because if they weren't going to come over and join us, it was just going to be just us. That was it. You can't stop that. You can't change it. It's going to keep on going whether we like it or not. So this is the new slide. You haven't seen this one. That's bright. So on the right with the blurred face is Chubbs. Remember I told you how the story continues to grow. And I told you that I was devastated and I wept uncontrollably, right? And the pain and transformation. But there was always a void when he was not in my house. Even though I would see him, pictures, texting George back and forth. And then, again, because I'm too selfish to understand the big picture, we get a phone call. There's a child that needs to be moved from the home that he's in. Would you like to take him? And for a period of time, we took a break. We were emotionally spent, just being honest. Foster parents probably know what I'm talking about. Couldn't do it anymore. The thought of another child coming in, we weren't done grieving. So we finally were. We finally were done, and we said, okay. And August 12th, we adopted him. Now, look at the accident that happened here. You probably can't even tell because it's too far back to see there. But on the left is my son. And my wife accidentally put him in the same shirt and put him in the same car and snapped a picture almost exactly in the same spot on the sidewalk. And I said, I remember another picture like that. And we pulled that one up. And I said, look what God can do when you just get out of the way. Instead of being so angry and so bitter and dealing with all that stuff, if you just get out of the way, he's got even better things, because now I've got this family and I've got this child. And he gave me that one too. And there's actually another one in there that there's not pictured. We've adopted 2 boys in the last couple of months. So when I got my selfishness out of the way and got that bitterness out of the way and stopped rooting against the very people that are out there making a difference, look what happened. I mean, you probably couldn't have photoshopped that any better. What I'd like to ask for you guys to do is to really try to, before you hear from George, try to shift from what I've just shared with you into what he might have been dealing with and going through that entire time. And what I want to tell you is, this is an amazing man standing before you. I could not have done what he did in 14 months. I don't know a whole lot of people that can. So if you just take a second and put your hands together for George.
Well, when I came into the system with Chubbs, I came in as a non-offending parent for one. So I want to just make it clear he wasn't taken out of the house. He was actually with his mother in a substance abuse case. And I didn't know that I actually had a child until about 4 months. I had to go through the process of taking the DNA. But once I took the DNA, I was given a case plan. I was given a case plan where I got to see him 9 hours a week. I got to see him on Tuesdays from 2 to 5, Thursdays 2 to 5, Fridays 2 to 5. I also had parenting classes I took on Mondays. I had a therapy class on Tuesdays in the morning, and I had another therapy class Tuesday afternoon that was part of my case plan. Keep in mind, I worked the schedule every day from 10 in the morning to 2 in the afternoon, and then I would go back to work every day from 5 to 10. That never changed. So you can only imagine, basically on a Monday morning, I did parenting class from 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock, went to work from 10 to 2, went home for my break, went back to work 5 to 10. Tuesday mornings, part of my case plan was I had to do therapy from 9 to 10. Then I would go to work from 10 to 2. Then at 2 o'clock, I would get him from 2 to 5, drop him off to the FSW, which is the family support worker, and then I would return to work 5 to 10. This schedule went on for a long time. I never got my visits increased. I only got those 9 hours a week to be his dad and to do a case plan. For one, not knowing the system, not knowing that we had a visit where it looked like I messed up. I didn't know that everyone that was around him had to have a background check. So his mother came over, she flat the tires on my car. I freaked out, tried to get my tires taken care of, left him with someone. The case manager came by, I wasn't there, the person wasn't approved, they took him out of the house, had to go back to court. Of course, I'm the bad person. But I had to explain to the judge, look, I was not aware that everybody around need to be background checked. But anyway, we got past that. how I got to know them was I didn't see him for like 4 months. It took 4 months for the DNA. So even though they got him when he was probably 5 or 6 days old, I didn't come into the picture till about after the 4th month. But when I came into the picture, with, for one, I had a case plan. I had no problem with the case plan, but what I found is after I took and accepted the case plan, everyone started to work against me. No one wanted to do the referrals. No one wanted to get the services started at first. It was just, I was stoned. And part of the case plan was, it was reunification / adoption. So I believe at the time, they really just didn't want me to have it. Even though I was doing everything I had to do. They do up there what they call as a home study. So in the home study, I showed them I could afford him. I could take care of him. I could take care of myself. But they wanted to hear from the doctors. And they wanted to make sure that I was in a shape that I would be able to take care of him with just being me. Because at that time, I was a single dad. How I came into contact with Scotland was through just basically notes through the bag. At first, I didn't know who they were. I didn't know their race. I just got notes that was passed through a bag from the FSW. I got his schedule from his wife because she just wrote down, this is what he does from such. She gave me like a complete schedule of what he did from the time he would get up to when he went down. That way, when he was with me, it wouldn't be like he wouldn't get confused. So I made sure those 3 hours I had him, I would always keep with that schedule. Now, at the beginning, it was good. I mean, we passed some good notes, but then it got to the point, there were some bad notes that were passed, because I will never forget, I had plaited his hair. And, of course, them not knowing anything about plaits, something got in his hair. And so my daughter had did his hair before, so when he came back, his hair was like the way it was before. And I was like, hey, what's going on? I'll send his hair such and such a way. But once again, there was tension there. Because he had already made it very clear to me that he loved my son and he wanted my son. So let's just, if we want to keep it real, let's just keep it real. He had already let me know he wanted my son. And at that time, the system up there, I had case managers that at the beginning were not there for me. And finally, I just had to get rid of them. Okay, I'm just gonna keep it real because, and I didn't get and the one that I got rid of now, we were best friends because you know what, she was just looking at paper. She was not looking at the person. Now even though I had 6 other kids, never had a problem with the law, all did very well. They all came to court. They all spoke very well of me. That still was not good enough for me to be able to take them home. They still told me I had to take a case plan. So I took it. And I did that crazy schedule with those visits for almost about maybe 12 months. So what I did is, as it got closer to me being able to get him, I had one final step I had to do for reunification. The process, it should have taken about 4 months. But unfortunately, don't ask me how it happened, but legal didn't look over something that was in the reunification. It didn't give like a specific timetable for me to complete my last task. Like every other task, it basically said, you got to visit 3 times a week. These are your visits. These are your hours. Well, my last step of reunification was he had to do a couple overnights. He had to do a couple of like visits out in the community, just different little things, but it didn't give a timetable as to how long it would take to do it. Technically, it should have taken, if they would have done the timetables, it would have taken probably 3 to maybe 5 more months. But because when they wrote it, they didn't put, it's only a certain amount of time each week. I went to my lawyer and I said, I want you to look at this. I just want to make sure I'm reading this correct. And he says, I don't know how they missed this. I said, but the judge signed it. So I could just get him as many days as I needed to complete the process. So I had some wonderful FSW, family support workers up there. I explained to them, because they've been seeing me for a year, so they got to know me. And so they're like, we'll change our schedules. we'll make it that he comes out every day until you get him home. That way you can speed up the process. And so they came, they were getting him, and Scott at first, they called and like, he's going out too much, what's going on? And, the lady had to tell him it's somehow legal mischief because they didn't specify how many times I could get him per week. And I never will forget that day when we went to the reunification staffing. And it was very hard because we were at that point where transition was going to happen. And the ball was rolling really fast, meaning because once again, he was, he didn't have a problem with the transport because he always got it back. You understand me? It got to the end, but we didn't need them. And we were just doing it among ourselves, meaning he was bringing Chubbs to me because he knew Chubbs would always return in a few days. So it was never like, it was nothing to him. And it got to the point, for me, it was very hard because I would have to, on Friday, I will never forget, I would probably cry from Friday to Tuesday because I knew that once he left on Friday, I wasn't going to see him again until Tuesday. And I went through this, and I harbored this hurt, I harbored this pain because I had to stay the course. I had a case plan. I wanted my son home. I couldn't let the tears I wanted to have then, I said I would have when he came home, and not before then. So even though there were days I went to that court, and I'm not going to tell you, he'll tell you, he was there. There were a lot of battles I lost in that courtroom. And then finally, one day, the judge was like, when are you going to stop coming? And I said, I'm not going to stop coming till my son comes home. That's what I told him. So that day that we were at the office doing the reunification staff, all of a sudden the power shifts from Scott being in control in the driver's seat to now I'm in the driver's seat. Most people will look at like, okay, I got him now. That's not the way I saw it. I'm in the driver's seat now. He's coming home with me. I never saw it that way. I always felt that there would be a way that the relationship could still continue, even though yes, it started out kind of ugly. Yeah, between the bag, we sent ugly notes to each other from time to time. I'm not going to lie to you; they weren't always nice notes. We weren't saying, "Kumbaya, we love you." No. There were ugly times, but there were also emotions there. I cannot get mad at him because this child had been in his house for 14 months. 14 months. I mean, a case plan that was supposed to take me 6 months because of referrals not going out, because of people not wanting to send referrals out, that God revealed those to me, and I had to get them out the way. You understand me? I had to, actually, one time in court, my case manager that I had, I knew that she was funny. And a friend of mine said, walk out there in that hallway and see who she's talking with. And it wasn't anybody that was on my behalf. And I watched her for another week, and I documented everything. And I went into the office, and I spoke with her boss. Her boss didn't want to do anything, so I had to go to the director of the program. And I said, this person has to go. I need someone that's going to help me to get my son home. It's nothing personal. And she's like, what documentation do you have? And I had a lot of documentation. And she says, no problem, we'll move you to someone else. And the person they moved me to actually is the gentleman that helped, well, didn't help, but he just followed up to make sure I was doing what I needed to do. And I guess my thing to you all, like, the system definitely does not look at guys as a being, or single men as a being, a person. The woman, if the woman can't get the child, it's never, we look at the father. The father's always bypassed, at least up there. I don't know how y'all do it here. But if you meet a George Poole, or if you meet a man that's really trying to go to wherever he needs to go to get what he needs to get done, as a team, you all come together, you pull for that person. You don't pull against that person. You gotta take out the blinders of what you're looking at about a person on paper and get to know the individual. Because we all could have certain things on paper. We just never got caught, so it's not on paper. You understand me? That's a big difference. You understand me? You know, I talk to a lot of, I talk to a lot of people like, oh, well, I can't get my kid because I have a background. Well, you know what? The only difference between you having a background and maybe the other person I have one is that you got caught doing what you're doing. The other person maybe didn't. And I'm not saying that justifies, but I'm just saying sometimes you can't be in a situation where, there's the past there. So there were reasons why I was not looked at. But there was also a situation that even though there was a past, you have children that are coming to court on your dad's behalf and saying how great of a dad I am and how great of a provider I am, but yet that's still not good enough for you to give me my child. Not a problem with any of them in school, not even a referral in any of their folders. And my kids, they range from 28, 26, 19, 15, 13, 12, and 3. Not to mention 5 grandkids. But the point I'm making is that you can't just judge a book by what may be on a piece of paper, because that's what Scott was doing. And he didn't do it intentionally, but they were bringing stuff to him that he wanted to hear. They were bringing to him, well, we're going to get him because we're going to give him this case plan that we know. Ain't nobody. And as I told you on my work schedule, you all know no one in their right mind would have taken on a case plan like that every single day. I don't even know what I was thinking when I did it. I'm serious. I don't know what I was thinking. But I know that the first time I saw him, because once again, once the mother left the picture of she didn't want to do what they needed her to do, I could not see him until DNA was established. So I didn't see him until 4 months. And the first place I saw him at was the same target that me and him made the transition at the end of him giving him back to me. My first visit with him was at the same target that he dropped him off to me. So I don't know. That's kind of weird. But that's the way it went down. So as I was saying, we were sitting there and at the staffing. And they were like, well, he has only a couple more visits he needs to do. He'll do, it would have taken 3 or 4 more weeks. And then me and Scott, we looked at each other and we're like, we're not going to put him through this anymore. We worked everything out. He brought him to me at that Target. I'll never forget that day because he said, well, make sure you bring a truck because I got a lot of stuff. And I'm like, at that time, I had like this little car. I'm like, a truck. I didn't know what could have accumulated in 14 months. But sure enough, when I came, I borrowed somebody's van and I brought it. And he went head on and he, first thing he did was he got everything out. We spoke like we normally speak or whatever. And it wasn't until he handed him to me. I never saw him cry before then. I had never seen him cry till that day. And when he cried, it was like he couldn't stop. And his wife was with him and she was crying too. And they had every right to. And he handed me this piece of paper with his website on it. He's like, just every now and then, send me some pictures of him. And so I listened to what he told me, because I got him back that September. And then I was like, I really want to get him, I want to get him baptized at church. And I'm like, I need some godparents. And I'm like, I don't even got to think about who his godparents are going to be. I just need to make sure that they are prepared for this because, it's like somebody had to win, somebody had to lose that day. You understand me? To me, there was no real winner there because yes, after 14 months of me going down to this courthouse and being denied my rights to be a dad, being like knocked down and beat up, they had all type of hearings for me. I mean, it was like a witch hunt. Every other week I was in court. It got to the point I thought I was going to lose my job. Because every now and then they would, we got to go to court for this. We got to go. Wait, we going for? Sometimes I didn't know what I was there for, but the judge was very happy at the end. I can assure you. Because she's like, when after I decided I wanted them to be his godparents, they accepted. And I went home, and throughout the case, I'd kept all the notes and everything from the different court dates and everything, and I wound up burning out about 5 shredders. Okay, I only got the big ones, but I burnt out 5 shredders because of those garbage cans back there. I would say, I'm not lying to you, there was 10 full things of paper shredded. That's just how much we were going back and forth to court. That's just how much the system was really trying to just make it that I would be beat down and I would just give up. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. So, like I said, that day was hard. You know, I will never forget it. It was that Saturday morning. You know, it was really hard. And I told him, you know, and he's had Chubb since then. He's stayed over. He's gone over. He invited us over for Christmas. We saw him. We got to see them up in Jekyll Island, Georgia, because we had another. That was our first time that we spoke, and it was nice. But you know, it didn't stop there, and it doesn't have to stop when a child goes back home. Yes, the biological parent will probably have some problems at the beginning, but if you know, in a situation like this with him, why would you want it to stop? Why would you want it to end? And then, you know, after I get him home, and he's been home with me for about 4 or 5 months, I have another situation come up with my other kids. Now all of a sudden, DCF back in the picture. But this situation was much differently because I wound up getting the same judge. I wound up getting the same attorney. Those 8 Garnet Lighton lawyers, Garnet Lighton this person, this other attorney for the child. He had his own attorney. It was about 9 people that fought me for 14 months. When they saw me come in there, they said, sit down. We know you've been vetted. We know we put you through more than what we've ever put anyone through. And we're sorry. And we're going to make this thing right today. So when I went there with my other 3 kids, it wasn't like they were going anywhere else besides my house. And so the judge signed off, okay, they're not going into foster care. Everyone in here knows you, Mr. Poole. They're going to go home with you. So they gave the mother a case plan. And she had a year to do the case plan. And unfortunately, it didn't work out for her. But at the end, they also awarded me custody of my other 3 kids. You understand me? So, you know, here this person is, you were beating me up because of a past. But now a year later, you're asking me after you beat me up to take these other 3 kids in. You understand me? And I'm like, okay, before it wasn't good enough for me to bring him home. But you know what? I can honestly tell you that if I hadn't gone through what I went through, meaning if I hadn't gone through the therapy, especially the therapy, I would not be the person I am now. Meaning there was a lot of things that was going on with me. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to tell you I was all together there because I wasn't. I was messed up. And especially the person I chose to have, at that time. But nevertheless, it taught me to be a better man. It taught me to be able to express my feelings. It taught me to be able to work out whatever I need to work out. I have a better relationship with my children now because I'm able to talk to them. So some of the things that I went through, I may have not liked, but at the end it made me a better person. But my point, I guess I would say to you all is that if you meet someone that's really trying to do the right thing, stop looking at their past and why that child's in the system. I mean, obviously, you all have been doing this long enough that I think you would know. Then again, sometimes you can be wrong with just a gut feeling. You can't even go off of a gut. Watch how a person works. And when I'm talking about watch how a person works, they got tired of me because I was on top of everything. I never missed, in the 14 months, not one therapy session. I never missed between the 2 I did. I never missed one of my parenting classes. Didn't miss one. But at the end, these 3 people that I saw for 14 months were the ones that got him home. Because that's basically what they needed to hear from them, that I was in compliance, I had learned what I needed to learn, and that they knew he would be safe and fine coming home to me. So it makes a difference, but You have some people that it takes a little longer to get there. You have a lot of parents that it takes a little longer to get there. But I'm saying, as long as they're trying, don't give up on them. Don't give up on them. And I'm not saying that, foster parenting is great. Obviously it's the last resort that you all look to do, and I get it. But sometimes it has to be done, especially if you got a parent or parents that don't want to do a case plan and don't want to get it. I get that. But there's going to be a few like me that's going to really want their child to come home. And for those few that are out there, and this doesn't just stop here with like me and Scott, because, we started out, we didn't like each other. And how do you think I felt when he told me he wanted my child? And at the same time, he was in the driver's seat. Because I was just at the beginning of my case plan. And no referrals were being done. So basically, I wasn't even past go. Because the case manager had already made her decision about me and never sent the referral paperwork. And when I was in court for my last 3 kids, she was in there, the same one I let go. She was in there on another case. And so she's like, "Oh, what you doing here?" I said, "It ain't for Chubbs." And so then she got, they called me up to the table, and she remembered, and the judge was like, this is emergency shelter hearing, and because it was a shelter hearing for them 3, my other 3, and she was sitting in the back, and that's when the judge like, "Okay, well, everyone says they're going to go with you, so they're already with you already, right? Homestead's already, everything's done, Judge. Okay, well, they're going to stay with you." And then I walked by her, and to make a long story short, she said, "I'm sorry." She said, "I judged you wrong." She says, "I've heard nothing but good things about you in this case. And I understand why you did what you did." And I explained to her it was nothing personal. I just wanted to bring my son home. And if you were going to be a stumbling block that was in my way, I had to get you out of the way. You understand me? And that, and a lot of times you don't hear that. And I understand y'all job's hard. I get it. You're not going to meet everyone that's going to be like me. They're going to be I know y'all deal with knuckleheads every day. Let's just be real. Knucklehead, hard-headed parents that, "Well, what I got a case plan for? What I got to do this for? I ain't do nothing wrong. What you doing here?" But y'all can't say that. I'm just saying that. Because I have friends that are now in the system, and they ask me, "What did you do?" But the one thing I can tell you about Palm Beach County now, what they are doing, is that they're giving dads, their children, single dads. Now, I'm not single anymore, obviously, I'm engaged, but at that time, I was by myself. But I'm just saying, they have started to award dads by themselves up there. So even my attorney to this day, he's like, he has cases where it looks like the dad could do it, but they get tired because the case plan is hard. I still don't know what I was thinking of. Maybe I was drinking too much sweet tea when I took that case plan. I don't know. But I was on something to agree to all that. But it was nothing but by the grace of God that I made it through it, because I was raised by my grandmother, not by my mom or my dad. You understand me? And I had one of those old praying grandmothers. So when you talk about coming to the church and singing, I'm Baptist, y'all. So y'all already know. It's just like a funeral. We don't know how to get up and leave. And we don't know how to stop singing. So he was, when they came, we made them feel at home. We didn't have no collard greens or nothing like that. But or did we have collard greens? We had collard greens at that? Okay, so we did have collard greens. Okay. Well, the point is that at the end, me and Scott, we became such great friends. You understand me? It was such a hard journey that we had to look past how we personally perceived each other from the beginning of just what we heard. Because as he said, we were judging each other before we met each other. He was judging me by what was facts into him, what information he had, and a little book. That's all he had about me. He didn't know me. He hadn't met me. He hadn't met me until after 4 months. So you could just imagine those 4 months of getting these little notes and all this and that. And once again, there's no dad. Because, once again, they were, I don't know, moving very slow with my DNA. I never know it took 4 months to get it back. But anyway, does it take 4 months? I don't know. But it took 4 months. And it was only by me knowing the young lady upstairs that did it. I'd asked her did she get the results back, and she said they had it. And then once again, I had to get rid of that case manager because they came to court and basically said they were waiting on the results when actually the results had been in for 3 weeks. And the same person signed off that they didn't take him right away. That was another part that slowed us down because when he was supposed to be taken to get the DNA, the next day they didn't take him for 4 weeks. So 4 weeks we were going back to court, back and forth, and the case manager saying, well, we're just waiting on the results. And then I had to go in there and do my own little Magnum PI investigating, okay? And then I had to go take to the judge, well, I don't know if you want to get this case manager for perjury, because I'm not here, I'm not a lawyer. But on such and such day, they said we're waiting on results, and they hadn't even taken them yet. And so the judge says, let me look at that paper. I'm like, Judge, this is number 2, we got to knock off the list now. Got to go into the case manager number 3. So she got excused, you know. Well, actually, it was a he. He had got excused. But the point, and I'm getting ready to end because I know y'all have had a long day. But I just want you all to know of the love and respect I have for this man. I love him as if he was my own brother. And I have no problem with any time he wants to take Chubbs. Even if he don't know it today, but he's here by himself, so he's going on duty this afternoon. I'm going to go enjoy some Pensacola Beach. Because I'm from West Palm, and we ain't never seen beaches this beautiful. So we're going to drop him off. We're going to drop him with a bag. And we're going to go have us a good little time. And maybe we might meet him for dinner later, maybe. But we have been really shown a lot of love. And I can only tell you all, and I said this, you know, as I was leaving court for the last time with my other ones. I explained to the judge, well, you don't have to worry about me coming back because I ain't got no more kids, okay? So, she's like, well, thank God, Mr. Poole. And, but, you know, it was just, maybe it was meant for me to go through what I went through with Chubbs, so that when whatever happened with my other kids happened, they would have never given me those 3 kids. I know they would have never given me my other 3 kids, you know. And so maybe God saw something that I didn't see, and he just used Chubb as being somewhat of an interference referee or get the ball kicking and going down the court to make it that it happened. But I can honestly tell you, foster parents, there can be a bond with biological parents. It doesn't have to stop the day that child leaves the house. I can only imagine because I can only speak about what I went through for 14 months. For 14 months, I had to hide my tears. For 14 months, I had to be Superman and just stay the course to bring my son home. I couldn't let anyone know what I was feeling. My kids we got to see him on weekends or on special events, but he always got returned. And they had to wait for their brother to come home. For 14 months. A process that should have only taken 6 months. Took 14 months. A lot of red tape. But I stayed the course. Me and Scott are better because of that. We don't see each other because he's in another state, but before he moved, even after he came home, because he's 3 now, he came home when he was like 1.5 years. But he's been at their house before they moved. I've had him, even after we did the reunification, I still let him come and get him. He still could see him. We're friends on Facebook now, so obviously he sees a lot more of him. But I'm just telling you that there can be a bond. Yes, it's hard to give that child up, but as you get them, you somewhat see in the part of just your contract, like you said, by the government for a certain amount of time. But once that parent gets together, they've got to get together. It's like you said, there's no book, there's no manual that you can talk about a person's feelings or emotions or what they'll do. You know, they were telling me when I got him back, he would like go through like withdrawals. He wouldn't eat. He wouldn't do. You know, he was just going to go through a lot of things because he was already on the system that they had him on. And here he was going to have to go from a system of a mother at home that waited on him all day to a father that worked every day. So he had to make some very big adjustments. He had, because of the drugs, he had some issues at the beginning, but through the proper intervention that his wife got for him right away, it turned the whole situation around. I mean, it turned him around. Things they said he wasn't going to be able to do, he's able to do. We had to do an MRI on him to make sure that the drugs hadn't, because he was basically, she never took him to the doctor up until she had him. He was dirty, of course, on cocaine and opiates. The MRI, that's where you know when there's a God. I took him for his MRI, came back negative. Nothing was done. There was no damage done to his brain from the drugs. So it was nothing but God, because they told me he was late in walking. He was late in doing a lot of things. But because of this family, when they had him for those 14 months, and with you all, not here, but up there, doing the same services, getting the referrals, getting the services in place for him, because he had to learn how to walk. He did not walk on time. He walked very late. By the time I got him, he still wasn't walking. And so I had to actually go with them through the physical therapy and to sit there and cry as the lady's trying to get his legs, because his muscles, they just wouldn't move. They was just very lazy. But she told me, because of the drugs, it takes a little bit longer. But she promised me he would walk. She promised me he would walk. And, well, he walks now. And he's doing very good now. He made it through a lot. The transition was not the way they said it was going to be, meaning he didn't go through like the depression of not sleeping and whatever. He had to transition from someone watching him all day to when I still work the same schedule. So they gave me a referral for child care. So when I went to work, he went to daycare. And I worked 2 shifts. So he did daycare day and evening. So he went in the morning when I went to work from 10 to 2. I pick him up at 2 o'clock, bring home me from 2 to 5. I go back to work at 5. He would go back to daycare from 5 o'clock till 10 o'clock, because I got evening daycare up there. And then I would pick him up. And then, of course, on the weekends, the kids were there, and they kept him in. It was hard for me. It was really hard for me. But every time when I picked him up, and I always used to tell him when he used to get in the back seat, when I used to pick him up before I got him, I got you. Just keep on. I got you. And I'm going to get you home. It's going to take a little while, but I'm going to get you home. And I'm thankful to God every day that I do have him home with me. I'm thankful for Scott and his family, because they're our family now. We're like a family. We're just an extended family. And what I love most about them is that they never saw him to be a color. They never saw him to be a color. They never looked at him like a color. I mean, they would take pictures of him placed. I'm like, but don't they know they white? But I'm just saying. But they never looked at him like he was a color. They just, wherever they went, they just took him. And I got to meet his family, and they were like, when we met him, I met him at an adoption at the courthouse. The same courthouse that we battled all that time for him. He invited me to come to the adoption of one of the children. So we went, me and Kim, we went, and we had a great time. We had a great time. The other one I didn't get to go to. But just know that you all make a difference in what you do. All of you. And obviously, teamwork is something that I know y'all are committed to. Just got to find a way to work better. Got to put these systems together in place. I mean, it's a great system, but you know why with the great system, you always got somebody that wants to come in and change something up and do it differently. Well, I'm a firm believer, if the wheel ain't broke, don't mess with it. But if it needs a little adjusting, then adjust it. Because you have to adapt to the time that we're in now versus the time that we were in before. So I just want to just tell y'all, thank you all so much for having us. If you ever meet another George Poole or Scott Mosby, embrace them. A lot of people need to know about this because it doesn't have to stop when that child comes home. And that's my biggest point, because it's what it's all about. It's all about the kingdom building and the impact and how it changed him and how it changed me. Because you would have never thought that, at the end, most parents, when they get their kid back, they don't have anything to do with the foster parent or whoever took care of their kid all that time. They just want their child back home. And they're not going to say thank you to that person that opened up their home, and did everything that they weren't doing for whatever reason. And I think, to me, that's really sad, and maybe some people just don't know how to say thank you when a situation like that occurs, but, it is what it is. But I know y'all are tired. We're ready to get to the beach. So I'm going to wrap this thing up. Thank you all for having us, okay?